Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum. I'm your host Faisal Raza and you are watching Foresight. Viewers, Indian Modi regime is going to conduct fake, fabricated and staged elections in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir's puppet 90 seats assembly. This engineered exercise will be conducted in 3 phases, which starts from September 18, then held on September 25 and on October 1st, with vote counting scheduled for October 4th. World is watching that how India is attempting to legitimize its military siege and draconian rule through staged elections, which has sparked widespread criticism and concern. We will try to analyze the motives behind the orchestrated electoral exercise, the implications of demographic changes and the ongoing human rights abuses. We will also discuss the international community's response, Pakistan's role in exposing India's actions and potential consequences of inaction. We will try to uncover the truth behind India's nefarious designs to undermine Kashmir's autonomy and identity. To talk on this very important issue, we have in our studios Ms. Farzana Yaqoob. She was the former Minister, Azad Jammu Kashmir government. Most welcome to you, ma'am. Thank you very much for your presence. And with her, Dr. Awais bin Wasi. He is the Indian Affairs expert. Most welcome to you, Dr. Thank you very much for your time as well. Welcome. And online joining us, Dr. Waseem Ishaque. He is the senior analyst. Most welcome to you, Dr. Thank you very much for sparing time. Dr. Awais, my first question to you, under the complete inhuman and draconian military siege, genocide and war crimes, India is holding fake and staged 3-phase election in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir from September 18th. Do you not think that it's Modi's another attempt to divert world's attention from the extreme human rights abuses, ethnic cleansing and systematic state terrorism?
Exactly. These elections, after 10 years, after the hiatus of 10 years, these elections are going to be held in September in 3 phases. But I think that whatever you have posed in the question, we need to contextualize it. Because earlier what India did is, especially after in 1951 when the first state assembly elections were held, so India tried to project this exercise of these elections akin to the exercise of right to the self-determination by the people of J&K, but later on there was a United Nations resolution, and that resolution turned down India's stance or India's point of view, because that state assembly, it doesn't have any mandate to decide the future disposition of the issue. Then later on, assembly elections and even Lok Sabha elections, they were held, and even some people from resistance camp, they participated, and they were of the view that if there is some channel of democratic right to after participating these elections for the final settlement of the dispute, we can opt even that option also.
Definitely.
But what happened in 1987, that was the watershed moment in the history of, especially in the electoral history of the political history of Jammu and Kashmir, when those elections, they were massively rigged. The candidates of Muslim United Front, there were chances that many candidates, they will clinch or they will win these seats. But because of that massive rigging took place in 1987, that triggered that armed struggle that continued even now after 35, 36 years. And then especially the election of 1996, that was massively rigged. But there was another shift in the electoral history which we witnessed, that is in 2002 state assembly elections. And in state assembly elections, what Kashmiris did is that they differentiated that the participation in these elections, they were of the view that these elections might be considered to resolve their day-to-day issues, and these elections, they have nothing to do with the larger question of the Kashmir dispute. and they participated in 2002 elections and in 2008 elections and 2014 elections, and their even in Lok Sabha elections you must have seen that the participation they have increased it. But the important point is that we need to understand is that even in 2008 the turnout was, according to some estimate, that was 60%. But immediately after that there was an Amarnath agitation.
Yes.
There was a peaceful indigenous intifada broke out in Jammu and Kashmir, and that continued till the this martyrdom of Burhan Wani in 2016. So that means that these elections, these elections are not akin to their exercise of the political aspirations of the
Obviously,
Jammu and
obviously.
Kashmir. That needs to be,
and
and
that
India,
never be,
what
and that never be the alternative to the plebiscite as well.
exactly,
Because,
that India through these elections now, coming back to your primary question, that tries to project internationally that democratic exercise is taking place in Jammu and Kashmir. So the world should take it as the routine exercise which in other countries such exercises are being held. But I think that India is unable to hoodwink the global community
Yes.
with this facade and this false democratic exercise which India tries to project.
Your point well taken. When we are talking about Farzana Sahiba, so-called Moody's Delimitation Commission has proposed and BJP regime endorsed the 6 additional assembly seats for Jammu particularly and only 1 for Kashmir Valley. That took the total tally to at least 43 and 47 respectively. So how it had undermined the Muslim majority Kashmir Valley area, and what would be the impact of additional seats in Jammu, also the seats of the scheduled caste, because Modi wants it to accumulate it and have the government.
You see, the strength of Modi's government has been that it can propagate. It is really good at propaganda. No matter what they actually do with the people living within the recognized territories of India, and Kashmir is not a recognized territory of India. So what Modi does is that at the ground level we see massive lynchings and we see such blatant human rights abuses, but what Modi presents is something which is very palatable, which is very acceptable, and that is this nuanced democracy that Modi likes to present, that India is so amazing and BJP has done its best to bring on board those who are the untouchables, the unseens. But the reality is completely different, and that is what Modi is trying to portray in Jammu and Kashmir as well. Modi is also good at utilizing the tried and tested formula of divide and rule. In this division, what he is doing is that the state of Kashmir always had majority of Muslims. There is no denying that fact. Even Jammu, although it was not a majority Muslim region, but that did not mean that the minority was really minor. And so what they have done is that by increasing the representation of the unit of Jammu, they've made it into unit territory, but we as the representatives of Kashmir shouldn't be calling it a UT. It is the state of Jammu and Kashmir, and one of the part of the state is apparently going to get more representation than the other part. What does that show? That clearly shows that India is not really sure that even if it pulls off these elections, would it really get the kind of people that it wants, and that is why it is trying all kinds of means that are necessary for them to bring in the changes that they require now at this point of time. Now, why do they need to do that? Because they have been using constitutional and lawfare related terrorism since 2019. They have started changing the laws. What they are doing is that now with the backing of Supreme Court of India, because it accepted that abrogation of the articles is fine, they need to go ahead. It is because of the Supreme Court ruling that these elections are taking place after 10 years.
Yes,
So you see that all this constitutional terrorism that is taking place, India believes that what it is doing is right. It is also using its might. These elections, no matter how they are portrayed, one cannot forget the number of forces that are placed in that territory. There is no decrease, there is an actual increase.
No doubt, your point well taken. Dr. Waseem Ishaque sahab, how do you see the Indian attempt to have completely fabricated staged elections, either hook or by crook, to endorse the so-called union territory status for the Jammu and Kashmir, creating 90-member puppet assembly, a remote control chief minister, and a power vested with the lieutenant governor? Whether Modi's regime intends to test after snatching the Kashmir's real autonomy in 2019?
Faisal, we are actually witnessing a very different scenario, whereby whatever the arguments you just highlighted, the puppet assembly and the puppet chief minister, we will not be witnessing it for the first time. In the past also, in last 75 years, India always had a puppet chief minister and a puppet assembly, and whatever the central federal government wanted.
This cycle,
exactly,
no doubt about that.
Exactly the same kind of people were there to represent the Indian government over there in Kashmir, even before the abrogation of Article 370. So, but now we have passed over we have seen last 4 to 5 years how India, through a salami slice, has been able to actually try to change the international perception about the prevailing situation in Kashmir. There is a false notion that stability has returned. There is a mainstreaming of Kashmir, and anything which is happening by the freedom fighters or by the people of Kashmir is labeled as terrorist, cross-border terrorism coming from Pakistan, unfortunately. So they have been able to manipulate the international opinion, and by and large, I'm sorry to say, the double standards of the West and the United States, that they have absorbed the last 5 to 6 years attempts of actually redoing the status of Jammu and Kashmir. And the most serious thing, that this time they have been more hawkish, and we have seen the statements of various serving and retired military generals of Indian Army saying that they are ready to capture the Pakistani occupied Kashmir. Unfortunately, they have tried in last 4 wars in the past. They have not been able to do it. They have been defeated miserably. But they are the warmongering on one side and the political mainstreaming on the other side. Through a salami slice means that gradually they have been moving. They have done some constitutional amendments and then constitutional reforms, and now they are at the last stage of grabbing the entire area of Jammu and Kashmir, unfortunately. But what we have seen at the international stage, Israel, despite having so much of genocide, is still being labeled as the vibrant democracy of Middle East. And the similar notion, India has been able to sell across the vibrant democracy of the biggest democracy and the Western values which India enriched, inherited, and India wants to propagate. So on those very notions, the Prime Minister Modi has been reasonably successful in convincing the international community and also the great powers to a large extent. That's why they have given the blank sheet to India for its peaceful rise and Indian leadership in national security strategy of 2017 and also 2022. And now, in either case, if the President Biden's party, Democratic parties, win or President Trump comes in both cases, Prime Minister Modi would have a lot of leverage with the United States because of the Indo-US strategic partnership, Indo-US nuclear deal, and now we have seen the US blank check in terms of Raza to Israel, and same way Israel-Indian nexus. So I think the elections would happen.
You are absolutely right, Dr. Waseem. You are absolutely right, Dr. Awais, as Dr. Waseem is actually saying, and Ma'am Farzana also pointed out that, do you not think that Indian Supreme Court, military, media, other entities, all working for Modi regime, and this had followed a set and pre-planned pattern after August 5th, 2019, when along with other organs of the Indian state, Indian Supreme Court given a draconian verdict in December 2023 of upholding abrogation of Article 370-35A as constitutional and asked for elections. Now military and media are helping Modi to achieve that target.
Yes, in democracy, which is in practice the world over, the system is based on the separation of power. Executive should be separated from judiciary, and same goes with the other pillars of the state. That is basically the spirit in the democratic dispensation. But what happens in India, if we see that this judiciary has become the tool of executive. It is an extension of the executive, and whatever executive is doing for, in case of this Reorganization Act, it was introduced by the executive in the beginning, and later on it was ratified by the Supreme Court, disregarding its own constitution, because that constitution says that in order to revoke that article, the concurrence of the Constituent Assembly is required. I am not saying it.
Yes.
Their constitution.
It's
that
constitution,
says it.
Indian constitution.
And
saying it.
even, I may not claim to have a legal expertise, but I can cite the book Article 370 by the leading Indian lawyer A.J. Nurani,
Yes.
who was extensively discussed the the different aspects of it, that how it is illegal, number one. Second is that according to some other parameters, for example internationally and bilaterally, this goes against it. Secondly, about this media that you have talked about, executive and judiciary, and we can talk at length about judiciary, what India is doing. And media, there was an Indian journalist, Ravish Kumar, I think, that he gave that name Godi media, patronized media.
Yes.
Okay, and since huge money is being even now being pumped in the media houses, and there is very few dissenting voices. If, for example, Arundhati Roy is not in India, there was another journalist and academic, Natasha Cole. She was deported from the airport, right? So such kind of curtailment and of squeezing of the dissenting voices in India, which is claimed to be the largest democracy. So if you see all the pillars of the state in detail, so I think that we come to know that all these pillars of the state, they are basically advancing the agenda of Hindutva, which goes against even Indian constitution.
Definitely, you are absolutely right on that. Ma'am Farzana, Indian wants to portray through these upcoming dummy elections exercise what Modi's motives are actually, and whether Delhi wants to speed up demographic changes and elimination of the Kashmiri identity. If so, it's going to be very disastrous, not only for India but also for entire region.
Well, I'll take up the speed of bringing in non-Kashmiris.
Yes.
They're working as fast as possible. So there is this impression that maybe they're taking some time and then this is going to be sped up. No, they've been working day and night since the constitutional abrogations to change the demography. So they've been doing their work. They have not stopped. They have been facilitating. There are so many people now. They're bringing in people, and then they're announcing these huge budgets to give this impression that this is for Kashmiris. No, it is not for Kashmiris. It is for these non-state subjects. It is for these military and paramilitary forces that this money is being allocated in the name of Kashmir to build homes for them, to build cantonment areas, and all that is required to host people who are non-residents of that area. At the same time, what they're doing is that they've kicking out Kashmiris. Yes. They are taking away our homes. The lands which were of Kashmir, the Waqf, and all of that is being taken away. So Kashmiris are being squeezed out. Indians are being brought in. The statehood is being jeopardized. At least for India, for Modi, the statehood does not exist anymore. They have achieved what they wanted to achieve. At this moment, what they are doing is just executing the developmental framework for these non-Kashmiris to be able to live and for them to be able to get investments from Muslim countries. Sadly, there are Muslim countries which are standing by India
This is really
at this
very
point of time,
unfortunate.
which is
Really,
extremely
really
unfortunate. And in doing all of this, what we also see is, as the previous speaker said, that there is a complete copy pasting of what Israel is doing in Palestine.
Yes,
This
yes,
taking
no
away
doubt.
of lands. This settler colonialism is something which is acceptable to the West. You see, the West completely accepts what Israel is doing, and they are for it and they are assisting. So the West, to whom we are looking towards fixing these issues, they actually accept settler colonialism.
Obviously,
and we see the
obviously.
same when we look at Kashmir, that India is taking away the lands, it is removing people, literally kicking them out of their lands. And so the West is going to do the same with India as well. Why? Because India at the moment in this region is the blue-eyed
you are
baby
absolutely right. Your
of
point
the
well
world.
taken. Your point well taken. Dr. Waseem, how do you see the India on one side holding the shameful elections at the gunpoint, and on the other side, Indian occupation forces continued their oppression, human rights abuses, and the state terrorism, charging the indigenous Kashmir movement to a new height where Kashmiris will never accept anything less than the freedom from India. But the thing is that India is right now having the backing of international community, and India is doing what they want to do.
Faisal, these elections are not happening in Kashmir for the first time. We have seen these sham elections in last 77 years several times. We have seen Farooq Abdullah and Umar Abdullah and Mahbooba Mufti coming time and again, over and over. But the issue is that the determination of Kashmiris, the self-determination attempts and their wishes and desires, the settlement of Kashmir as per the resolutions of Security Council, that remains prime and that would continue to remain prime. Please mark my analysis. This election would not be different from the previous elections. Again, the majority the majority of Kashmiri population would certainly reject these sham elections. Those puppets would again be fed through informal channels and certain state machinery, and those who are already actually selected would be elected. But would that have a legitimacy for the people of Kashmir? I say no, because this has been going on in the past. But what would happen differently this time, that despite abrogation of Article 370, despite having favorable regional and international environment, and despite having seen the template of Israel genocide in Raza, these are three motivating factors for Prime Minister Modi. But his popularity is on decline. He is just a marginal Prime Minister, and from my analysis, he is Prime Minister for the last time now. He would not have any space anymore. So therefore, since his graph is already on the decline, the message for the people of Kashmir is that they must continue their struggle for their self-determination, their rights which has been enshrined by Security Council resolution. And they have shown their resilience in last 77 years, and I'm sure nothing can deter them. Despite that India has a huge presence of security forces, there are different analyses and different research, but on the average, one Indian soldier over 3 innocent civilians. This has been going on since last about 3 decades. But what has happened? The strength and motivation and determination of Kashmiris for their self-determination has not at all been stunted or died down. So therefore, I'm very optimistic that their struggle would continue and these sham elections would face the same consequences as they have been facing in last 77 years.
Well taken and well elaborated. Dr. Awais, what are your thoughts about India's decision to allow voting rights to non-Kashmiri temporary residents, including the Indian military personnel, the government and the private sector employees and the migrant workers? It's about 30% whooping rise in the voter list and the voter tally, increase from the 7.5 million to some estimates it's 10.1 million now. along with the 6 million fake votes which were registered there, along with the domiciles issued and to the non-Kashmiri Hindus particularly. Some says it's 8.6 million. So what's the reality and what's happening right now, particularly the non-Kashmiris who are going to vote? What sort of a drama this is?
You know, this the figure that you have just mentioned, and I also came across in some articles that there is an increase of 30% in the voter list, and I think that it's quite plausible if we see that, because if you read the domicile law, so domicile law says that the one Indian or the people, even military or the civilian, who lived in India for 15 years or served 7 years there in Jammu and Kashmir, they have the right to get the domicile certificate, number one. And second thing which is very important is that the procedure is on fast track, that within 15 days they have to ensure that those who are interested or those who are eligible to get domicile certificates, they will complete their procedure within 15 days. Otherwise, or failing to do so, will incur the penalty of 50,000 rupees, right? If we see, you know, this these instructions and this fast track procedures, so this is something which is quite convincing and plausible that there must have been increase with the percentage you have just mentioned. And the purpose, of course, is that to bring about demographic change later on, you know, if some kind of plebiscite at any point of time is held. But at this time, that with the huge percentage, you know, with the percentage means the people who participate in these elections, of course people will do that, but with this number, that those who are not the indigenous or the residents of Jammu and Kashmir, so India with this huge percentage tries to give this impression within India that we have settled that dispute once and for all, and internationally also, that look, that this is the massive participation of the people, voters, they have participated, and it signifies this one. So I think that international organizations, they must pay heed to that, and they must, you know,
definitely
ask India
definitely.
to have access.
International community has
to
a great
access.
role in that, but
Exactly.
unfortunately, international community is always sides towards India rather than having the side, because they are always the proponent of the human rights and the democracy, but unfortunately, they are totally blind when it comes to the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Madam Farzana, India has made a deep-rooted conspiracy to rob Kashmiris of their history, language, ethno-cultural identity after revoking the special status of the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. While by settling non-Kashmiris, India has attempted to change the territory in its own favor. How dangerous this path would be?
Well, it would be very dangerous for India, of course. Whatever India does, it believes that it can pull it off. And there is this apparent reality that yes, whatever India has wanted to do, it has been able to do. But look at Kashmiris. What difference has it made to the resistance? What difference has it made to the identity of Kashmiris? Have Kashmiris stopped being Kashmiri? No. India has tried its best. They've changed the language. Kashmiris are really good when it comes to speaking Urdu, writing Urdu, or we've been speaking Urdu forever. But now, since 2019, and this all that is taking place is not an issue of 2019. It has been going on previously.
Obviously.
It has just become blatant. Modi likes to have this larger than life, that you see what I can pull off. This far right extremism that we see in Modi is now, you know, you see it in Trump as well, you see it in France as well. So the world is now coming into this era of, you know, extreme behavior, and Modi likes, because he likes that pomp and fanfare, that look what I did. But what is it doing to Kashmiris? Of course, it is very painful for Kashmiris to have this impression that someone is trying to snatch away their identity. But can you really snatch away someone's identity? Can you really change the core of a human being? You can never do that. You might be able to cover it. You might be able to place a lot of different issues and blockades, but does that mean that the Kashmiriyat is going to die or it is going to become non-existent? That is impossible.
Obviously,
that
it
is
is
impossible because the whole state of Jammu and Kashmir, and mind it, we have the state, we're part of Azad Jammu Kashmir is part of this state, and while we the Kashmiris are alive on this side, they can never ever eradicate the identity. They might be able to get away with a lot of stuff, but they cannot completely dehumanize and completely make us vanish. We're very much here to stay.
Definitely, no one is going to vanish Kashmiris, because they are alive with their struggle,
Yes.
they are alive with their movement, and they are alive with the cause, the ideology which they have actually. So this is the essence that for which actually we are getting strength, we are getting life because of the Kashmiris, no doubt about that. Dr. Awais, how do you analyze the reports, the additional deployments of the Indian Army, police and paramilitary has been made, while occupation force is stressing upon innocent Kashmiris to vote or face punishment, while brave Kashmiris are completely rejecting such type of notion in upcoming elections?
You know, this election, the context of the deployment of the paramilitary, it raises serious questions about the credibility of these elections, because these elections are already 900,000 security,
More than 900,000, yes.
Security and paramilitary forces they are deployed, and in the month of July, some 35,000 more forces have been deployed in Jammu, right? Military and paramilitary both. And recently, I also came across a report, I think a week ago, there is additional deployment. So if you see this massive deployment, as Dr. Waseem sir was just sharing the proportion, of the forces on the Kashmiri people, then if you see the promulgation of black laws, Armed Forces Special Powers Act and UAPA and PSA, about which recently United Nations Human Rights Committee has issued a report and raised concerns about it. And then you see the curtailment of rights of the people living over there, because in Kashmir almost all the jail complexes, they are filled with the prisoners, and most of them they are political prisoners, right? Keeping this context in view, this deployment and all this occupational framework, I think that it raises very serious questions about this whole process which India tries to showcase across the world, that everything is hunky-dory, everything is fine.
Yes,
But
everything is not fine, you are absolutely right, everything is not fine, and what India is actually doing, it's really the crime against humanity, whatever is happening in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Dr. Waseem, Indian occupation regime has relocated entire core in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Nearly 300 additional paramilitary companies deployed, over 10 battalions, more than 500 special forces personnel across the district of Rajouri, Poonch, Udhampur, Doda, Kathua and Samba. This didn't include several companies of the Central Reserve Police Force and the police. So is it possible that it is only for the polls, or any possible atrocities and war crimes within the occupied territory, or some misadventure India is planning right now?
Faisal, this time this deployment from my perspective is multi-dimensional and very significant and very serious from the defense point of view. Just please see the last 6 months, Indian retired generals giving a lot of threatening statements that India is ready to capture Pakistani occupied Kashmir, which is very unfortunate and it will never happen. But now there's a term used, deterrence. One would expect that India would not go into any sort of misadventure. However, the possibility stays. Secondly, at every time of elections, India has tried to give a false flag operations and portray the cross-border terrorism coming from Pakistan by doing something from its own. So the second purpose would be, one, to deter Pakistan, and then to convey to the international community that India has been determined in ensuring security for free and fair and transparent elections. So therefore, through that stage managed attempts, would portray certain cross-border terrorism activities to malign Pakistan and then discredit Pakistan. And thirdly, the absolute notion of security which India would try to give during this electoral process, because they would say that in last 5 years there have been much gains on the security, and now since this is an event of political mainstreaming, and it will not happen only by the military alone or the election commission alone, there will be a whole of government and whole of nation approach, synergetic application of all elements of national power, involving especially the media, the Indian think tanks and the print media, electronic media.
Dr. Waseem, getting from your point, Pakistan and India both are the nuclear weapon states. India has a huge military and paramilitary presence in the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Do you not think that if the Kashmir issue will not be resolved at earliest, which Modi regime don't want to even discuss it really, fears of eruption of the hot conflict in the region is inevitable in future particularly?
My analysis that nuclear deterrence is firmly in place. We have been able to establish strategic balance in South Asia through a demonstrated nuclear capability. So therefore, the chances of a conventional hot war between India and Pakistan, from my perspective, unless the India tries to do some sort of misadventure, those are not really on the card. However, the low intensity conflict which has been going on, when we have seen that India has sponsored cross-border terrorism across length and breadth of Pakistan in last, especially since 2024, and last month and this month has been very significant. So India has already been using a very successful tool of using its proxies for creating disturbances in Pakistan and creating a strategic effects. So therefore, I feel that conventional conflict between India and Pakistan is not a real possibility. However, India would continue to support its low intensity conflict through its proxies, and that stays, the possibility stays, and that maybe
continues, but India continues to be the state-sponsored, continue its state-sponsored terrorism, not only in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, but also in Pakistan, which we are witnessing in Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa particularly. So your point well taken, Dr. Waseem. Ma'am Farzana, do you not think that the United Nations paralysis or the weakened position on internationally recognized Kashmir dispute rapidly turning into a living threat to the peace and security in the region particularly, as India persistently trying to change its disputed status, especially after the August 5th, 2019?
Well, so United Nations used to be very proactive a few decades ago. But with time, what we've seen is that it has weakened, its power has diluted. The NATO forces have literally taken over the United Nations. Now one can see that if and when whatever is desired, if the countries who have veto power, if they desire for something to happen, it shall, and if they don't, it will not. Once again, a clear example is one, what is happening in Ukraine, two, what is happening in Palestine. And so there is no action when it comes to what India does in Kashmir. United Nations does come out with reports. So we have to give some credit which is due to it, that it does speak up about human rights abuses. It does, the Secretary General does talk about Kashmir, the fact that we have resolutions and people have the right to self-determination. So we have words on our side, we have statements on our side. I've also, once in a blue moon, America as well, the State Department as well provides us the words and statements. But we do not have any actions which can give Kashmiris even the slightest bit of hope that the words that are being said will someday become true. But having said that, no matter what they say, the fact is that the struggle of Kashmiris is not alive.
If we cut it short, yes.
Is not alive because of them, but it is alive because of us, the Kashmiris. We will fight back no matter what
Definitely.
happens.
Very brief, because we have run short of time. Dr. Awais, what your thoughts as India keep on rejecting international law? Geneva Convention, UN Security Council resolutions on Kashmir. In violation to UN Security Council resolution, India has time and again conducting staged poll, rather organizing free and fair, transparent plebiscite under the supervision of UN. Any hope when the world is silent on Kashmir and favoring India?
You know, the first of all, that India violates its own constitution. Number two, India violates the Fourth Geneva Convention. The provisions are with me. I can just, read one. Article 42 of the Geneva 4 prohibits torture against civilians in the occupied territory. The high contracting parties specifically agree that each of them is prohibited from taking any measure of such a character as to cause the physical suffering or extermination of protected persons in their hands. There is another important, that is, Article 49 of the Geneva 4 says the occupying power shall not deport or transfer part of its own civilian population into the territory it occupies, and there are many other provisions, there are many other sections of this 4th Geneva Convention. India contravenes to that. Secondly, about the United Nations Security Council resolution, especially 38, that mentions clearly that there should not be any material change on either side, India or Pakistan. India is doing the same.
Your point well taken. Your point well taken. Dr. Waseem, very brief in few seconds. When the US, Russia, European Union and other are completely favoring India, what Pakistan has to do to expose Indian draconian acts in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, India's ongoing barbarism and war crimes and state-sponsored terrorism, not only in Kashmir but also in Pakistan?
Pakistan must continue its diplomatic and moral support, use all multilateral organizations, especially the United Nations, OIC, Arab League, GCC, use all these forums. We are going to have a SCO meeting very soon, so let's use that platform, also use the great powers, good offices, and I think we should not be exhausted. We must continue supporting our Kashmiri brothers, and inshallah the day would come certainly when they would get their self-determination.
Thank you very much, Dr. Waseem, for your presence online, and thank you very much, Ma'am Farzana, for being here in the studios. Thank you very much, Dr. Awais. Thank you very much for your presence as well. Viewers, as you have listened to our panelists, any regime in India, even the Modi regime attempt to have the fake, false, fabricated and staged elections will never be the alternative to the plebiscite and the right of self-determination. That must have to be given to the Kashmiris to decide their future. Apparently, Modi wants to project these elections as a democratic exercise in Kashmir, but it is not really. Modi using the divide and rule mantra and also wants to divert attention of the international community from the real issues, the war crime, the genocides, the atrocities going on there, the snatching of the identity of the Kashmiris and their real rights, the basic rights over there. This demographic changes, particularly in the occupied territory, are actually speed up horrifically, and it's going to be dangerous for India particularly and also the region. It will be very important that the proven fact that India is at the backtrack and this is all what is happening right now regarding election is actually the pre-planned and the fabricated one. There is no chance to have the direct conflict between Pakistan and India, but the limited war might be some of the misadventure or the state-sponsored terrorism which is going on, and we have witnessed there in Balochistan as well. It's a horrific thing and Pakistan has to deal it with stern hands right now. Azm-e-Istehkam strategy is the answer. We have to implement the National Action Plan, 14 points. That is the answer really. When we are talking about the UN's role, UN has to do a proactive role and they have to realize their own resolutions must have to be implemented regarding Kashmir. Pakistan has to start the aggressive diplomacy. There is no other way. So this is today's Foresight. It's time to sign off. Allah Hafiz.